Now you're in a position for discernment. You can discern truth and error. And that's the sort of thing that Peter is talking about there in verse 4, where he is reminding them of what they already know. Going back to 2 Peter 1:12, therefore I will always be ready to remind you of these things, even though you already know them. So Peter is in this reminding business. And here's one of the slides we used early on in our study of 2 Peter. It's all the references to remind throughout the book of 2 Peter. It's a huge theme. Has forgotten that he has been cleansed. Chapter 1, verse 9, I will always remind you of these things. Our verse 12, it's right to refresh your memory. Verse 13, you will always be able to remember these things. Verse 15, I have written both of them as reminders. Chapter 3, verse 1, do not forget. Chapter 3, verse 8, bear in mind. Chapter 3, verse 15. So I've shared this with you before, but Dr. Toussaint at Dallas Seminary, who's now with the Lord, just took a huge pile of bricks off my back one day because I thought I had to get into the pulpit every week and come up with something new. I would think to myself, well, they've already heard that 6 months ago. They're not going to want to hear that again. Yet the truth of the matter is your average church can't remember what you taught 6 minutes ago, let alone 6 months ago. And he was taking us through these Peter books in a doctoral class, and we got to this section here about remembering, and he says you don't have to come up with something new every week. What people need is they need to be reminded of what they already know, and they need to be exhorted to live in that. And that's what Peter's doing here. And once he told me that, boy, it was like a weight came off my shoulders. God has not called me to be innovative. I'm not very innovative anyway. I don't know what there is to say that hasn't already been said. That's one of the reasons I had a difficult time fitting into evangelical academia, because the big pressure there is you have to come up with an original contribution in your dissertation. And I thought, an original contribution, I mean, what do I really have to say that's worth saying that hasn't already been said? So I figured out how to get around that. I took a false teaching that had come out, and I responded to that false teaching. So I responded to someone else's novelty, because I really don't have any real novelty on my own. And that's what Peter is saying here in verse 12. He's just saying, I'm reminding you of what you already know. And that's why this letter is fairly short. It's only 3 chapters. He's not writing a tome here. He's not writing a dissertation. He just wants to remind them of what they already know. So that is his purpose statement. And the purpose statement continues on there in verses 13 and 14. He says, I consider it right, as long as I am in this earthly dwelling, to stir you up by way of reminder, knowing that the laying aside of my earthly dwelling is imminent, as our Lord Jesus Christ has made clear to me. So what he's saying here is, after I die, which apparently he thought he was going to die pretty quick, I'm not going to be around anymore to present these truths to you. So I'm writing this book to remind you what you already know, because not too long down the road, I'm going to be dead and gone. I'll be in the presence of the Lord, and I want to just take one last shot at it here to remind you of these truths, because the day is going to come where I'm not going to be here to remind you anymore. So you'll notice that he talks here about his imminent death, the laying aside of his earthly dwelling. And that's why 2 Peter reads very nicely alongside 2 Timothy. Just as 2 Peter is Peter's last will and testament, 2 Timothy is Paul's last will and testament. And we've studied 2 Timothy in this church. But Paul says the same thing in 2 Timothy 4 and verse 6.